You ever fighting a boss in a video game and like about 2 hits in, you realize, nah, this ain't the run, and then you just kind of like let yourself die. That's probably a really smart move and saved you a lot of time. Hi, my name is Sandro, and I'm here to teach you two things. Well, really one thing that is 2 words, and there's two variations of it. The first thing is fail faster, or really weird tech slang that I sort of like co-opted along with the rest of the video game industry to become something that's a little less business oriented and a little more artistically oriented. In a business sense, I think this sort of equates to something to the effect of you're supposed to take big risks, but also understand those big risks may not all pan out, and to sort of understand when to quit or early on. So take those big risks early, quit early on, then take more big risks, etc., etc. In an artistic sense, what this means is another great phrase called "killing your darlings." So it's the sense that if you have a really cool idea for a thing, I implore you to prototype it, to dive into it, follow that inspiration very quickly, and get really good at assessing if it's not going to work or if it needs to be tabled for later. Maybe if I like set up the.
Why is audio recording suffering?
So speaking of failing faster, I actually just replaced my mic because yeah, the other one was not sounding great. I don't even know if this one sounds better yet, but I do want to test it. So go figure. Practicing what we preach here. Uh, yeah, fail faster. Take some risks, but also understand when a thing isn't working and when you need to make a change. I've done this before in projects that I've worked on. So many of you know I'm working on a game called Mobile Engagement Chassis Steelhearts. It's a mecha type thing. When that game first was in development, it had custom dice that I was making with like little like stickers. It had cards that I was printing off of on index cards. It had all these lovely little fun components that I realized no GM in their right mind would want to spend the hours and hours to create. And I didn't want to make the game expensive and have to, do all kinds of production stuff. So I reassessed the whole project at a certain point and realized that I wanted to make things more accessible by making things more standardized. So now instead of custom dice, we roll tons of little d6s. Instead of cards, there's a dedicated sheet for that. Instead of little tokens, we created a status bar type thing. The game's really unique in that sense, but we can talk about that another time. The point is, I failed faster and I failed smarter. And I failed forward, which is the second part of this. So for anyone who's been playing RPGs that are not the Dragon game over the past couple of years, you probably heard of the phrase fail forward. Fail forward, for those who are uninitiated, is the idea that when you make a failure, so let's say, you have to roll d20 and you roll a 5 on your check, and so you have failed to lockpick the door. Instead of just like, oh, the door's still locked, failing forward would be like, you unlock the door, and it's very loud, and everyone's very much aware of what you just did. But it creates the scenario continues. Instead of giving the players a dead end, things progress. So on top of failing faster, I encourage you to fail forward. Learn from your mistakes. Pretty much any little creative side project that I end up engaging with and sort of picking out and being like, oh, I want to try this thing, or oh, I want to try that mechanic. I look at it later and I'm like, hey, there's all these cool mechanics that I could Frankenstein into this other thing that I'm working on. So anytime something fails, I always try and learn something from it and pull that into the next thing I'm working on. Which brings me to my last point, I guess, which is that giving up is underrated. You've probably heard me a few times in this video talk about projects that I've abandoned, and that's fine to abandon projects. I encourage you to abandon projects because it's better that you tried, but we like to galvanize putting absurd amounts of effort into a thing in our current state of everything. And I think giving up is not just okay, it's encouraged. Know when to quit, and know that just because you quit does not mean that you did something bad. Failure is not a bad thing. Failure means that you tried and you probably learned. What's bad is if you fail the same way multiple times because you didn't learn at all. That was pretty much the extent of what I wanted to talk about today. I was talking with a buddy, a tabletop RPG buddy earlier, and we got on the topic of failing faster, and I realized this is like this bit of video game developer wisdom that I'd picked up on in that time, because in video game development, if you're creating a mechanic that isn't working, trying to implement something that's creating too many bugs, trying to get players to learn something that they just don't want to learn, it's really important to identify that soon and redirect. Also do this in my tabletop design. So, if I'm introducing a mechanic or I'm introducing a new set of rules and no one's understanding it or no one is engaging with it, that has failed. And it's good to know that that failed. It's good to try and figure out why that failed and either reassess or cut it all together and try and make something new. So, yeah, giving up is underrated. Fail faster, fail forward, fail smarter. Like and subscribe.